Welcome again to the Real Collective podcast. I am Brendan McKeigan. With me, as always, is Sean Tasse. While you're here, you might as well like, subscribe, and share the channel. That would be fantastic. We would really appreciate it. If you're listening to us right now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much for that. If you're doing all three of those, wow. Thanks, Mom. That's probably who would do it.
Yeah.
We thought we would do something a little bit different today. No. Is it really, though? Is it really different? We're still talking about real estate. We're just talking about something that hasn't been used in a while, and that is the first refusal. So today we're going to get into what a first refusal is and how to go about using it.
A little bit different, but kind of the same.
Yeah.
It's we're seeing them more and more often, and if you don't know what a first refusal is, some people call it a conditional sale incorrectly. Some people also refer to it as the sale of the buyer's property. So typically what that means is that you're putting an offer in on a house, and you are saying, hey, I'll buy this house as long as my house sells. And so in industry jargon, we call that a first refusal or a sale of buyer's property. A lot of the times, the general public might call that a conditional sale. It is different than a conditional sale. It's reported differently on MLS than a conditional sale. Typically, your conditional sale will involve a home inspection, mortgage financing, maybe a condo status certificate review, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, the way it reads is it does say the offer is conditional upon the sale of the buyer's property known as 123 Main Street in this city, unless the buyer gives notice in writing and da-da-da-da-da. And so the one piece that's in there is how long the seller is going to allow the buyer to try to sell their home. In there, you're also going to see how long until the property goes to MLS. You should be seeing that, as well as what's called an escape clause. Okay. The escape clause says, provided further that the seller may continue to offer the subject property for sale in the event they receive an offer that's unconditional, excluding obviously the condition to be released from the first offer, notify the buyer or the buyer's representative in writing, and the buyer shall have X amount of time to either say, yes, I'll go ahead with the purchase, or no, I won't. So those are the pieces that are involved in there. The mechanics of it are a little bit different. Sorry, they're not a little bit different. It's just not something that a lot of realtors have been dealing with over the last 3-4 years. Like I said, it shows up differently on MLS, and back in the day when I started, I heard stories about domino deals, right? Where one deal would be reliant on the next house selling, and the sale of that house was reliant on the next house selling, and the sale of that house was reliant on the next house selling, where there was 7 houses in a row that are all waiting for this first house to sell. And when the first house sells, it pushes down the dominoes and it sells all of these other houses in a row. So a law that sort of hinges on the next and the next and the next. Our advice, our strategy these days to our clients looks a lot like sell your house first before you go and buy something else. If you are going to be buying and there's some uncertainty in the market as to how much you're going to get for your house, whether or not it's going to sell, this is another great strategy that you might be able to do. So yeah, that's the nuts and the bolts of it. But there's a lot of intricate details that, until you start to unpack them, it sounds kind of confusing.
Yeah. I've written a few that have it. I've gotten a few offers that have had them too. And sometimes, that's just the way to go. Especially when you're looking at properties that are maybe more like rural. I find it happens a lot with rural properties because you just never know what to expect with those. But as a buyer, it can just kind of help protect you, because it's like, yes, I want your house. I'll buy it. Here's my deposit. I'm buying your house as long as I can sell my house by March-tober 15th. And then if Marchtober 15th rolls around and your house hasn't sold yet, you have two choices. You can firm up on the house that you want to buy, or you can just walk away from that. Other flip side of that is the other people can still offer their house for sale. So then it's basically like you're first in line. So if someone else comes along and says, hey, we've got an offer from somebody else, so you got 48 hours or 72 hours, whatever the first refusal has, to waive your condition and firm up first.
And that's the intricate part of it, right? Because there's so many different moving pieces. And if you're the second position buyer coming in and you see that this house has a right of first refusal, which means they've got, like you said, they've got the right to say within 48 or 72 or in some cases 24 hours, hey, you know what, I'm not going to go forward with the sale. I have got no traction on my house, it's not selling. I'm not going to take the risk of owning two properties, so no thank you. Then that second position buyer might come in and push the first people out of the way. We've actually done that twice this year recently, like within the last month or so. So as the market changes more and more, there's different strategies that will work. And if you're buying a home, don't shy away from some of these houses that have a right of first refusal on them, where it's conditional on the first buyer fulfilling their conditions of selling their home, because you don't know what's going on in that scenario, right? And a lot of the times you're not going to get that information from the listing agent. You might, but oftentimes they'll want to hold their cards sort of close to their chest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like nobody ever wants to give away too much. I have a dog that decided to lay down on my feet, and that's why I'm sitting so far back right now. And trying to focus, and every once in a while he just looks up and goes, "Oh, please keep petting me." That's
what you're doing off camera.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing off camera. It's completely fine. You'll hear him whine. What was I getting at? I was going to mention something about a first refusal. Maybe not the best idea when you're in multiples. Sometimes you just go for it because you're like, well, I guess, but I feel like if you're doing that, you're kind of just driving the price up for somebody else. But also multiples are much more rare in this day and age to begin with, let alone on homes that a first refusal condition might be considered.
Yeah, it's just one more layer of protection, right? If the house has been on the market for 2, 3, 4 months, you might be able to get away with it. The sellers might say, "Look, this is all we've got. This is what we can go with." It gives you as the buyer some extra peace of mind. If the house is just on the market, 2 or 3 days ago, you're probably not going to be able to buy it with a first refusal. You might be able to buy it with the typical conditions that we spoke about before, but probably not with a first refusal. And again, it all comes down to sort of stick handling the particularities of that situation. And we've mentioned it before in a podcast where we sort of said, well, you've got to feel out the other agent, get a sense for what information you can get, and guide your client accordingly. And protection for a buyer client these days has the potential to look like a first refusal. It's not as strong an offer as an offer without it. Obviously, it's a better benefit for the buyer, the first refusal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not a lot of scenarios, I think, where it would benefit the seller.
No, it's like a last resort.
Refusal. Yeah. It's almost like I want to put the last jacket on layaway.
Yeah.
But I can't pay for the rest of the jacket until I sell my other jacket.
Starter jacket?
Yeah.
Chicago Bulls.
Yeah. Now that the Charlotte Hornets are out, it's the Bulls. And now that the Bulls are out, it's the Raptors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Seattle Supersonics.
Yeah, right?
Georgetown Hoyas.
Oh, yeah. That was a big one.
I know. So yeah, I think that's it. That's it from a buyer's perspective, and then I think it's a little bit different from a seller's perspective. So I just had the conversation last night with a seller. We were accepting an offer on the listing side that was subject to the sale of the buyer's property, and so unpacking what that means to the seller. It was probably a 15-minute conversation last night, so we can have some of that conversation on air, whatever this is, on the podcast in the second half. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like maybe this is a good time for a break then. Yeah. Let's take that. Let's take that break. Rewind and play this slow so you can digest what you just heard. We're going to hear from ourselves in this break, so buckle up because it's a good one. I don't know which one it is, but it's a good one, so put it in there. Again, like, subscribe, and share the channel if you don't mind. Download us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and we will be right back.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back to the second half of the program. That's how they used to say it in the 50s, was program. We're still here. We're still talking about first refusals. I hope you enjoyed that video because we definitely enjoyed making it. Maybe. I don't know which one it was. Anyway, we're going to keep making faces at the camera and having our dogs lay on our legs. More about the first refusals. We covered a good amount in the first half. Second half, let's get into a little bit more. Let's get into some of the nitty grits and like why it might not be so good, why it is good, why, how.
Yeah. So I think from a seller's perspective, if you've been on the market for a while and you don't have anything else going, and the only thing that you see is a first refusal, I think you kind of take it, right? Mm-hmm. The benefit to a buyer obviously is they're mitigating some more risk, and as a result they should be paying a little bit more. So the benefit to the seller in that case is that they hopefully can get a higher sale price because the buyer has more security, right? The security to be able to walk away from the property, a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks after they've actually bought the property, right? They can walk away because, look, my house isn't sold. I said, give me six to 8 weeks to sell my house, and it didn't sell, right? And so I walk away and I get my money back. The detriment, obviously, to the seller is you're sort of, it's not that you're taking your house off the market. It still is active on realtor.ca. People can come along and buy it. Buyers are somewhat skeptical about buying a house that's sold with a first refusal because the risk that they're taking is they're going to go and, do a home inspection. If it's a rural property, they're going to go and do a well and septic inspection, potentially only to find out that they can't buy the house because the people in first position say, yeah, no, I'm sticking with it. I'm buying the house. I'm going to remove the condition of the sale of my home and I'll proceed with the purchase. In which case the seller, like that second buyer, is out potentially $500 for an inspection and another $1,000 for well and septic. You know what I mean? So it's risky for a buyer in second position. It's also potentially detrimental to the seller, because what if that first house doesn't sell? So one thing that we do to protect our seller clients is, if we are reviewing an offer with a right of first refusal, we understand, hey, what property is being sold? What's the one that we're waiting on? Because, okay, our house sells if this other house sells. Well, what's the other house? What does it look like? What is it going to be priced at? Who's going to be selling it? Is the agent who's going to be selling it, your brother who just got his real estate license 3 weeks ago, or is it a reputable agent in town, right? The other thing that we look at is, why are these buyers, from a seller's perspective, why are these buyers buying this property, right? If they're buying it because, oh, well, we just want to upgrade, that's not as great in terms of a motivation as, hey, we're moving here for work and we need to have a place to live. And because if we don't, we'll be homeless, right? So there's a different level of motivation from those two types of buyers, and we analyze that when we're making a recommendation to our seller clients whether or not they're going to go ahead with it. Of course, the mechanics of it very simply are, if you are a seller and you accept an offer with a sale of a buyer's property, aka a first refusal, from a data input point of view, your house actually never shows as conditionally sold. Okay, even if they have the conditions in the offer that say subject to home inspection, subject to mortgage financing, those never show up on MLS, and your house never actually comes out of active status. So on Realtor.ca and public facing, it's still going to show as a property that's available for sale. Okay. And what we have to do, we don't ever click conditionally sold, and here's the conditionally sold date. What we do is we say, yes, there is a right of first refusal on the property, and how many hours they have, whether it's 24, 36, 48, 72. Those are typically the sort of timeframes that we see. And again, what that is when we have an unconditional offer from the second buyer, we have that many hours to give the first buyer a chance to say, yes, I'm going to go ahead with it, or no, I'm going to walk away from it. In terms of the money piece of it, you're going to make a decision from a seller's point of view, where you're sitting there and you're looking at, okay, well, here's the offer that I have that is in first position with a right of first refusal. And let's say another offer comes in. Okay, let's say you've sold your house for, $600,000 with a right of first refusal. Okay, and another offer comes in and it is $580, but it's an unconditional offer. Sign here and you're done. Now you've got a tough decision to make. Do you roll the dice and hope that your $600,000 deal is going to go through, or do you take the guaranteed $580,000? That's the decision. That puts you in a stronger position as a seller, versus if you're a seller and you've got that $600,000 right of first refusal and you get an offer that comes in for $620, then you're like, oh my goodness, I hope these 600 people do not agree so I can go and sell it for $620. And again, that's the risk that you're taking when you take an offer with a right of first refusal, especially as you continue to market the property. And the first position people at 600 might say, yeah, okay, we're going to go ahead with it. And you lose out on potentially $20,000, right? So there's a lot of different, it adds more complexities and it adds more choices to you as the seller. So yeah, it's a very interesting strategy that we haven't used for a long time as agents. I'd say 3, 4, 5 years. We haven't seen much of it, and we're starting to see it more and more. So that's why I wanted to cover this.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, we're going to see it more and more, and it's important for people to know, because they aren't exactly just like, oh, okay, you want to buy our house, but not yet. Just let me sell my house first. It's you bought a house, but you have the receipt, and if you want to return it at any time between now and that day, you can. So
with a full refund of your deposit. And the problem is, it's not just the general public who doesn't understand. I mean, we do everything we can to advise our clients about it, but a lot of the realtors who have only been licensed for 3 or 4 years might not have the experience or the knowledge or the expertise. I mean, even me, I've been real estating for longer than that, but when you're out of practice, there's a couple of extra, how are the mechanics of this? What's the piece that I'm missing? And you can get back into it. It's like riding a bike, right? But it's flush with different mechanics and different angles and different ways to look at things. So there's choices, right? Where before it was just sign this piece of paper, you've bought this house. You want a home inspection? No, thank you. You want to put a mortgage financing clause? No, thank you. You want to sell your house? You know what? Put your house on the market with any dummy and you'll be just fine. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore, right?
Yeah. And you got to factor in too that if you're the seller that's taking that first refusal clause, and yes, your home is still listed as active, but when they see that it's first refusal, you might be missing out on showings because some people want nothing to do with it, right? So they're just like, well, I don't want to go through that. Like, even if the home's totally perfect and fine, you're like, well, no, unless maybe the home, if you're the seller and you get a first refusal, maybe it's in your best interest to have your inspections done on your own dime so that they're available, so that anyone else who comes in can take a look at those inspections and then make an offer accordingly. And then that way you can maybe push that first refusal.
Yeah.
So, and that's maybe the way to counter that is like, yeah, you can do that, but you need to have all of your inspections done, and we get a copy of it to provide to anyone else who's interested in seeing the home.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Everything's negotiable.
Yeah, and then it's not up to it's not on the seller's own dime.
Yeah, not on the seller's own dime. And because the seller takes such a big risk by doing that, by doing a first refusal, that's kind of a good way to balance it out, I think.
Yeah, because if you're essentially, you might not be coming off the market, but buyers, like you said, are potentially more averse to showing the property or looking into it. And if it's for 4, 6, 8 weeks, sure, you're not coming off the market, but it's 4, 6, 8 weeks of time where nothing's doing.
Yeah.
And it might wind up that, 8 weeks down the road, the average price of a home has gone down by, $50,000. We've seen it. We saw it earlier this year. I don't expect it to happen again next year, but it might. Right. And so the faster you can get the property to a point where it's firm, especially as the market's fluctuating, the better off you're going to be. So again, that's a risk, right? And that's a potential detriment. Like if someone paid $600 for it on paper, 2 months ago, and now the 2 months is expired, and fair market value is only $550, $560. You're not going to see that 600 again.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's risk reward. All of this stuff is analyzing, what's in the client's best interest, and then it's up to them to make the decision about how they want to play it out.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's the info for you. That's the rundown. That's the first refusal. I don't know what we should call this video.
411.
What's a first refusal, or how does a first refusal work? And we do this in a thumbnail.
Oh, can we just screenshot that? That's great. Yeah, there you go.
It's like Popeye with an itch.
You look like Cranky Kong.
Cranky Kong. There's a Cranky Kong?
Yeah, it's like Donkey Kong's uncle or Grandpa Kong or whatever he is, the old guy. He's got he spins the record player. What's it called? Like a gramophone or something?
Yeah.
You didn't play Donkey Kong Country, when you were a kid?
No. Wasn't my jam.
Wasn't mine. It's okay.
Anyway, we hope you learned something about first refusals or Donkey Kong Country. That's the show. There's links down below that you can follow to some other episodes that might tie into what we've talked about here today, or might just tie into real estate in general. So take a look at those. They'll be there, or there. I don't know. I'm just pointing, guys. But it's working. It's working very well. So, again, for the last time, please like, subscribe, and share the channel on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. That would be fantastic. And if you have some suggestions for topics that you would like to see us cover that maybe we haven't yet, drop it in the comments. That would be fantastic. We would appreciate that because we want to know what you're thinking and how we can better serve you as a community. Yeah, right? That feels like a politician answer. All right, let's wrap it up. I'm Brendan McKeigan. This is Sean Tasse. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, keep it real.
Collective.